Good morning, everyone, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving break and with family and friends and well rested and headed into the sprint that we call the time before Christmas. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our November LSAC meeting. And to begin our meeting, I'd like to ask our interim commissioner, Robin Kinney, if she would provide an update from KDE, please.
Thank you so much, Chair Fletcher. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to see those of you online. We've been very busy since the last time we met, as I'm sure all of you have been busy as well. Just a few things, update from KDE. We are still continuing our selection process, our search for our executive search firm to help us find our next permanent commissioner of the Department of Education. We have been through a second reposting of our solicitation. The evaluation committee met yesterday, and we are scheduled for a special board meeting today, later this afternoon, to hear the results of our evaluation committee's process. So fingers crossed, everyone hopes that we can get that search firm on board, negotiate, get a contract, and have that underway. Our goal is still to have a contract in place by our December board meeting, which is quickly approaching. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, and we're going to push as hard as we can to get that accomplished. I had the pleasure of attending my first Council for Chief State School Officers policy forum in Nashville a couple of weeks ago. A really good forum which allows the chiefs of all the states, along with key policy advisors, to come and I will say celebrate and commiserate with each other. And so we did a little bit of both. I guess I bring back to you information that shows that Kentucky is not alone in the challenges that we are facing right now. So in some ways, that's a bit of a comfort to know that everyone is trying to figure out sort of what is the secret sauce that we're going to have kids back in school. We're going to have them learning at very high levels and creating those vibrant learning experiences for all of them. So we see that across the country. Had the opportunity to really talk about, a long-term recovery that's going to have to happen. It's going to take us time. Everyone similar as far as what we saw as far as test results. And so I just bring you words that we are not alone in our challenges. I am encouraged to hear, and we'll get into more of this discussion later about United We Learn and how we can create those vibrant learning experiences. But Kentucky seems very well positioned. We are, the background work that has already been accomplished is serving us well. As I talk to other chiefs from other states, some are not quite as far along as we are. And I'm certain that we will learn from each other along the way. We did have the Kentucky United We Learn fall convening, and allowed that time for lots of individuals as part of that council to come together and talk, continue to look what they have accomplished in the last year, and also to think about what the future looks like. They created a moonshot, and I'll share that with you a little bit later in the presentation when we get to Portrait of a Learner. And they also tried to create a sort of a draft definition of what is vibrant learning experiences. So I'll share that with you a little bit later as well. I'm continuing to interact and schedule meetings with the legislative body and continuing to meet with legislators individually as well as collectively. And those visits are going very well. It's allowed me an opportunity to talk to them about our additional budget requests, and those conversations have created a lot of questions and good conversation back and forth. So I'm very pleased about that. And I will be presenting at the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents Conference the first week of December. So I hope I see a lot of you there. But I'm happy to take any questions, Chair Fletcher, about the activities that have been going on here at KDE.
Any questions from anyone in attendance or in attendance online? Just so far as talking about conversations with our legislators, we seem to be having a lot of more in-depth conversations going into this session than I can remember as a superintendent. For example, our KASS body had numerous legislators and leadership that attended the summit earlier this year. Also, our co-ops have been inviting legislators in to talk with the superintendent. So we really appreciate the opportunity to give our ideas, our thoughts, and also to hear their ideas and thoughts. So again, I think going into this, there seems to be, as far as from what I can see, is more talks going on with our legislators, which is very good. Any others? Okay. Our first action item is a policy amendment from the Office of Career and Technical Education. Please welcome OCTE Associate Commissioner Beth Hargis and OCTE Division Director Larry Garrity to the presenters table.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Garrity is unable to be with us, so unfortunately, you only have me. I'm here on his behalf to bring before you a revision to policy 9224, which is emergency medical treatment. And this proposed revision will allow the ATCs to maintain, and I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. I just walked into the door from the hallway, having a trouble for a second. This will allow the ATCs to maintain an antagonist, or please forgive me. There's some water. I'm afraid I have diabetes and my sugar was getting low, so I've had to run down and get something, and it'll take me just a moment. My apologies.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Take your time.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, my apologies. At current,
I'm sorry. Would it be okay if would you like to wait and be the next one in line and give you an opportunity?
I've eaten something, so
We'll
it's
be
coming
more
back.
than happy to go out of order. That's perfectly fine if
No,
it'll give you an opportunity.
I appreciate that, sir. It'll be okay.
All right.
This revision would allow the ATCs to maintain opioid, antagonist, and epinephrine on the premises. Right now, they are not able to do that, and when students, when they come into the buildings, if they have medicines that they need to take, they are carrying them themselves. And so we believe that this would improve the safety of our students. And also we are covered under statute as far as trained personnel being able to administer these. So this has been looked at by our legal office and by KSBA, who oversees our policies. And so that's what we're recommending for revision. And I believe you have a copy of the new policy in front of you. So I'm happy to try to take on any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions from the group? Online? I do have one question. I believe this is the same policy that deals with our AEDs in schools.
It does.
And if you look at the policy, or I'm sorry, the policy amendment here, it talks about having epinephrine, and it looks like the same requirements for people that would be trained is very similar to the AEDs. But when it comes to the opioid antagonists, it doesn't really talk about how many people that would be trained.
Okay.
Is there a requirement in there would it be similar, or is that should that be added in there as an amendment?
Well, that's covered in statute, and it actually says a person or school employee authorized to administer medication, and then under 156.502 may possess the opioid antagonist or any equipment needed for its administration, and it may provide the antagonist to persons who have been trained. Now, we are also, I believe in policy, it says that we will have a minimum of 3 employees in the district that are within the school that will be trained in that, and so that would apply to this as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Lawrence County does not have an ATC, but welcome any thoughts from those that do.
So, Dr. Hargis, would your department, would it be responsible for the training of your ATC employees for doing this, or would that be in conjunction with the local district with our trainings, or how would that work?
Usually our ATCs follow the training procedures implemented by the local districts. And of course, everything would be administered through the guidance and oversight of the local health department as well.
Okay. So we have nurses stationed in, of course, all of our schools. but we don't necessarily have one at the ATC. We do have a nursing program, but so I'm just thinking about how that might work. And of course, in our situation, it's just right across the street. So
Sure.
it's really easy to have that emergency personnel, but every district situation is different. So thank you.
Well, and I do think that's an excellent point. I was always very blessed to have the school nurses located in my area technology center. As you said, some of them are located right next to the local high school, but some of them do not have a school nurse in the building, and it may be a few miles away. But again, we would be working with those local districts before we implemented anything.
Thank you very much.
On the physical analysis, of course, this is no additional funds for KDE, but as far as a local school district, I'm assuming KDE will help us with getting those medications, the epinephrine, or is that something that like we could work with our health departments to get those medications?
Actually, this arose from Eastern Kentucky. I believe that there was someone, one of the health departments, there was a grant or something, and so they were the ones that were asking about it. It's not a shall. So it is up to the area technology center as to whether or not they want to do this, and of course working again side by side with the local district. So I think it's very possible that some of them would not implement it, but this just gives them the authority to do so if it's requested.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the policy amendments to the Kentucky Tech Policy 09.224, emergency medical treatment?
Harry Burchett, Harrison County, I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Superintendent Burchett. Have a second.
Mike Borchers, second.
Second by Superintendent Borchers. Any other discussion? At this time, Dr. Brewer, if you would have a roll call vote, please.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kurt Biggerstaff, yes.
Mike Borchers,
Mike Borchers, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
David Cox,
David Cox, yes.
Robbie Fletcher,
Robbie Fletcher, yes.
Will Hodges,
Will Hodges, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
David Raleigh,
David Raleigh, yes.
Karen Solis,
Karen Solis, yes.
Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
Chair, all members have voted.
Thank you, Dr. Brewer.
Thank you, and my apologies again for the sugar.
No problem.
Well, we're thrilled that you have controlled it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Hargis. Up next, we have one regulation for our review and action. KDE Chief Academic Officer Mickey Ray and the OTL Policy Advisor Sarah Peace will present the proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3095.
Good morning, superintendents. It's nice to be here today to discuss these proposed amendments to the regulation. And I wanted to give just a bit of context before we walk through the section amendments. So we were required in Senate Bill 9 of 2022, the Read to Succeed Act, to bring forward proposed amendments to the Kentucky Board of Education to further define a multi-tiered system of support. So what you're looking at previously is it's a regulation that worked for K through 3 response to intervention supports. So what the legislature charged us to do is to expand this to further define the full system that would impact the district. And so the amendments have been informed by a cross-agency team at the Kentucky Department of Education. We had members of the Office of Teaching and Learning, members from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, as well as the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. And the work was led by Dr. Melissa Wainwright, who is our state MTSS coordinator. So I wanted to walk you through, and Sarah Peace has joined me today, and she really did the technical work of addressing the amendments. So she's here if you have very specific questions. I'm going to start just by giving a general overview. So you can see here on the first slide, these were all of the statutes that informed the amendments to the regulation. And the first one is the one that I've previously discussed. So Senate Bill 9 amended KRS 158.305 to require us to define the full system. 6459 is the statute that affords those supports to high school students specifically who would need accelerated learning based on ACT or not meeting certain benchmarks. 488 is requiring enhanced coursework for middle school and high school students. And then lastly, that statute requires the KDE to support teaching strategies for the tiered delivery model across all grade levels, so K through 12. And if you look at the next slide, we're going to get into the actual, thank you, Meredith, we're going to look at the actual amendment. So the first section of this regulation deals with the definitions. And so there were minor technical changes to all of the definitions, but we want to focus specifically on 4. And so if you look at the new definition for MTSS, the multi-tiered system of supports, that means a multi-level prevention system designed to maximize student achievement and social and behavioral competencies through an integration of differentiated universal instruction, assessment, and intervention. So this is meeting the requirements of 158.305 by defining MTSS. And then we wanted to, based on the feedback from the cross-agency committee, adjust some of the more technical definitions for the tiered delivery model. And so you can see there we have new definitions for Tier 1 universal instruction, Tier 2 targeted intervention, and then also Tier 3 intensive intervention. And so now, throughout the regulation, you will see references to all 3 versus just the response to intervention, which originally lived in 158.305. Section 2, there were 2 specific amendments. If you see here, this is where we have woven in the actual definition of MTSS. So each local school district shall implement a comprehensive MTSS for K through 12 that includes, and we've embedded the definition there. And then it also required individual student progress reporting. And this is something that, as you well know, is already happening in districts across our state, but it just formalizes that progress reporting and the monitoring process that would be needed to ensure that we're meeting students' instructional and intervention needs. And then in Section 3, this is where it further defines the evidence of the reporting requirements. And so it is, as of October 1, each local district shall submit to the KDE evidence demonstrating district-wide implementation of a comprehensive MTSS. So we are going to build out guidance around what that reporting would look like if these amendments are approved by the KBE. In our meeting with SCAC, the assistant superintendent, Jana Beth Francis, she recommended that maybe something like this could live in the CDIP. And I liked that recommendation. So we will work with the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support and really think through what that could look like and if that's the best fit for this model. But the goal is that in essence, you are doing what you're already doing, but we would be able to see that that's impacting the full K through 12 spectrum for the student experience. And that's really it in terms of the amendments, but we're happy to take any questions that you may have. And again, Sarah has joined me for any more technical questions that may come up.
Let's open the floor for questions. Any questions from our members?
So when you're talking about identifying our students, each district uses different assessment tools. We have the state assessment. You mentioned ACT. So is that going to be left up to each district to use what they're using as identification models?
It will. I think, Superintendent, most commonly people are using Map Growth or iReady, and that could be across all content areas. The only area in which there are actual approved requirements for the screener and diagnostic is in that early literacy space. But beyond that, it would be up to the local decision-making process.
Others? I think one of the things that, as far as a comment, when you start looking at different statutes, one of the statutes talks about coursework, whereas other statutes talk more about intervention strategies. And again, it looks like this aligns with statute. I think when we define the 3 different tiers, we're probably going a little bit above what's required in statute because we're given a more technical definition. But the only thing that worries me is when we start looking at requiring coursework, and I think one of the statutes also says that it's academically behind is really defined by do you meet college benchmarks.
Correct.
So what worries me is if we start doing actual coursework grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 for students, that will take away those students that will be in the career technical pathways. So we have hundreds of students each year that are, well, I have dozens of students each year that may not meet the benchmark from a college standpoint, the 18, 19, 20. But on the other hand, they get those industry certifications and become very successful. So I guess my question is, when we talk about academically behind, what's our definition of academically behind?
So I think that I would urge local districts to consider student performance on the screener and diagnostic. And so if they are shown to be at risk of not meeting benchmark or not being ready for grade level learning, then there would be the responsibility, not necessarily in a course, but to support that student with differentiated supports to improve their progress toward proficiency. So it could be a course or program. It could happen in a tier 1 environment with differentiated instruction for student groups. It's just, we want to be responsive to the needs of that student to help them to be successful and to move closer toward proficiency.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? I also typically ask the question, how does this go over and above the requirement of statute?
So in our minds, really the only thing that we have done beyond expand out the singular definition is to update the definitions that were previously in the regulation. So we just went and further defined the tier delivery model, that tier 1, 2, and 3, but they actually already existed. One of the things that we did, Superintendent Fletcher, is remove the word core just because of its previous connection to Common Core standards, and we know that's not what we're currently utilizing. And so really those were more technical amendments to language that already existed in the regulation. The one bold new statement is that full definition of MTSS that now lives within the regulation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just another follow-up. When we're looking at like tier 3 in high school, do you see that as could schools get could they get the understanding that now I got to add an intervention class for math and reading when we get, I just worry, I know like you were saying early in elementary, even all the way through middle school, the tier 1, 2, and 3 seem to align pretty easy. When you get into those high school models, when we say we're going to put tier 1, 2, and 3, which is what we all are trying to do, but when that's mandated, how do you see that, or how would you recommend a school to attack that into the high school level?
Sure. One thing I do want to clarify, so that statute has been in place for many years, and there's nothing in the regulation that would go above and beyond the requirements within the statute. I think there are many schools and districts that are handling that situation differently. Some of them have different times of the day where students go to different classrooms for support, not necessarily a homeroom, but kind of a time in which they are able to have intervention supports. I've seen it done in that way. I've seen other districts manage it through ESS and even within, classroom instruction. So working with that teacher before or after school. I don't think that there has to be, and I can't envision high schools establishing true intervention courses, but that there are course codes for that. But I don't think that has to be the only model. And I think for us, what we're trying to promote is that really what is happening with the high quality instructional resource in tier 1, students would just be able to have further practice in what they're actually experiencing in their tier 1 classroom at tier 2, and then more practice and frequency supports at tier 3.
Okay, we're on the same page, and thank you.
Okay.
Others? My last question.
Yes, sir.
When we look at monitoring from a KDE standpoint, will this be more of something like something like we do in GMAP, where we say, okay, as a superintendent, we're signing off that we're meeting all the requirements, or would this be something that could be reviewed individually for individual districts by KDE? How will the monitoring work exactly?
So I'll be very honest, Superintendent. So because we don't yet have board approval, we haven't worked through all of the plans for monitoring. I think it could be something that you would find in a district assurance, but then I also would like to consider the possibility of creating some sort of template or tool that would live among the CDIP instruments that we could show more specifics potentially around the MTSS implementation that's happening at the local district. But I think the important thing will be when those are developed, it will it would be critical to have superintendent feedback and feedback from districts on what that ultimate reporting document would look like if it goes above and beyond the district assurances.
Well, and again, it's a lot. It'd be a huge burden on KDE to monitor every single one and provide feedback, unless you're on some type of rotation or something like that.
Absolutely.
So district assurances make more sense as long as there's a template to follow and things of that nature. So I appreciate that so
And we will
much.
take that note for sure. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from superintendents? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3095, the use of response to intervention in kindergarten through grade 3?
David Raleigh, Lure County Schools. I'll make that a.
I have a motion by Superintendent Raleigh. A second.
Russ Tilford, Lyon County, I second the motion.
Second by Superintendent Tilford. Any further discussion? If not, this time, Dr. Brewer, if you wouldn't mind to do a roll call vote, please.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Mike Borchers,
Mike Borchers, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
Dave Cox,
Dave Cox, yes.
Robbie Fletcher,
Robbie Fletcher, yes.
Will Hodges,
Will Hodges, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
David Raleigh,
David Raleigh, yes.
Karen Solis,
Karen Solis, yes.
Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
Okay, Chair, all members have voted.
Thank you, Dr. Brewer. And thank you, ladies.
you.
We appreciate your time
Thank
and your hard work. Okay, next, we will now transition to an item for feedback and discussion. KDE staff will facilitate a conversation on current district implementation of Portraits of a Learner and how this shift in focus to prioritize the knowledge, skills, and dispositions valued by local communities can serve as a catalyst to support vibrant learning experiences for all students.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher, and we'll let our guests from KDE get at the table. I think we also have Dr. Kelly Foster online with us, or I hope we do, somewhere. Yeah, I see Kelly online. Appreciate the time for a discussion today, and we hope that it can be just that. It can be a discussion, a conversation, sort of where we are and where we're looking to go forward. First, I want to express my appreciation to the superintendents who have provided sort of informal feedback to us already on Portraits of a Learner. And as we consider really adopting Portraits of a Learner into a more formalized process, I think that's what we're considering. As we think about the background of Portraits of a Learner, whether we say it is hands-on learning or deeper learning or Portraits of a Learner, it's been going on in Kentucky for quite a while. And I know David Cook is at the table with us today, and his division, of course, helps spear that through an innovation lens. It's been through an innovation lens. You may recall that the Kentucky Board of Education actually adopted a statewide Portrait of a Learner back in October of 2022. And they adopted it from a policy perspective. And the statewide Portrait of a Learner identified skills the students needed to be prepared really for an ever-changing economy. And I heard that repeated at our Council for Chief State School Officers Policy Forum. We are really looking at a very different economy, a different way of life, a different way of even using technology. You know, when we think about it, this little thing here, our cell phone, really allows our students and staff and each of us to have immediate access to just about any piece of information we want. And it's just that easy as long as your internet connection's working. So we really are heading into a different world as far as, because they have that. So what else do we need to equip our students with to be successful in the world? In that statewide Portrait of a Learner, some of the skills that the state board, along with the help from lots of people that were pulled together to ask about what competencies we would want to have our students, you'll see most people, I think, would nod their heads up and down when they think of each of these, and that is engaged citizen, critical thinker, effective communicator, empowered learner, creative contributor, and productive collaborative. So it was done through a collaborative process. It looked, when the state board was doing their portrait of a learner, very much like how a district would attract or approach your own local portraits of a learner. So as a result of that and the work that has been ongoing, we are very pleased to see sort of this momentum that is building now. We're seeing lots of districts kind of dive into this world or progress further along on the journey that they're already in. So I guess where we find ourselves now is how can we make sure that every child has the opportunity of this type of learning and comes out as citizens that possess these skills and attributes, whether it is the statewide portrait of a learner as just one example, because it's just an example. Local communities can adopt their own and it can be honored that way, or it might be a combination. It might be for those districts that are just starting to look at portraits of a learner and thinking, I don't know where to start. They might want to take pieces and parts from the statewide portrait of a learner in order to develop their own. So lots of options that are available. So the Kentucky Board of Education, in thinking about next steps and really to ensure that each and every student has this opportunity, they were considering adding it to a requirement for graduation. And so that's where we appreciate your feedback. And we heard very much that, wait a minute, maybe we need to talk about this a little further. And so we've kind of pumped the brakes, as one of our board members said, let's pump the brakes a little bit on this journey and invite more discussion on this topic. So while the board believes this might be a possible path forward, we want to slow down just a little bit and talk to superintendents. The other thing is, from my viewpoint, sitting as an interim commissioner, there were two other things that caused me to say, yeah, maybe we need to slow down just a little bit. We had the Kentucky United We Learn fall convening, and we're talking about it there, and there appeared to be a little bit of confusion there as well. And so that was an indicator, and after the two-day meeting, I think we were in a much better place after having those additional discussions. People seemed to understand a little bit better and understand the intentions, because I think the intentions of the board are very good. They want to make sure that every student in every district has this opportunity. And so I think they come with very good intentions. The other thing, we did a little self-assessment within our own agency, because we've had a lot of people working really hard on United We Learn and Portraits of a Learner and what that looks like. But we needed, even internally, to kind of pause a little bit, get everybody in the same room and talk about it. And so I'm really happy that it feels like we're a more cohesive group and are able to explain it better. So what we're going to do today, with your help and participation, is we're going to facilitate a conversation really on current district implementation of Portraits of a Learner. We know we have lots of people at the table and online that have developed their own local portraits of a learner, and you are well underway. So we're going to have some guiding questions at the end, and we'll kind of walk through those. To support our conversation, you did receive two documents. One is the Kentucky Board of Education's call to action, and that document keeps our board always looking forward and keeping those things in mind with everything that we do to move our school districts forward. And then we have a second document today, which we have put together sort of 4 core assumptions. And when we get to that part, and I'll walk you through that, I'll be looking for some head nodding up and down, yeah, that makes sense, that's right. This is not like for action or anything, but we want to make sure that we're on the right path with our core assumptions. So I'm going to ask you to participate from 2 different perspectives. One, wearing your own local district hat, because we do have a lot of expertise sitting around the table with us in Portraits of a Learner. So we invite you to share with us from that perspective, and then also from a perspective where you represent all superintendents from across the state, as well as all districts and all students, on how we can make our educational process better. So I do have guests with me at the table, and I'm happy to have them. Dr. Foster is going to spend just a few minutes, I think, walking us through sort of a really short history so that we can remember where we've been. And then Dr. Matthew Courtney is at the table with us as well to help support that discussion. Mickey Ray is here. Mickey is our person that is always beside me going, Robin, don't forget the standards. Don't forget the standards. And so, any kind of instructional practice that we have in place, whatever we call it, whatever it looks like, we have to make sure that we're remembering that it has to be aligned with the Kentucky standards. So that's Mickey's role in this process. And of course, David having the background of innovation. So
I just wanted to make sure that we knew that Sarah Snipes, who is probably the person who's written most of this stuff around portrait, is also on the.
Thank you, David. I didn't know if Sarah was going to be able to join us. So Sarah's on as well. Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kelly Foster, and she's going to walk us through just a little bit of that history and the statistics, I guess. Dr. Foster?
Hey, good morning. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew Courtney. I apologize, guys. I have a sick parent this morning that I'm helping, so I've turned it over to my team for the morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having us here today. We're really excited to hear from you and engage in this conversation with you today. As Associate or Interim Commissioner Kenny has outlined, Portrait of a Learner is something that we've been working on here at KDE for many years. Starting that work back before the pandemic and pulling together stakeholders from all over the state and every level of the spectrum, from superintendents down to the classroom, to really get a Kentucky statewide framework together. We have right now in Kentucky 93 school districts that are either fully implementing a Portrait of a Learner or are on the path to fully implementing a local Portrait of a Learner. And so as state policymakers, it's important to us that we recognize and acknowledge that work and that years-long effort that those districts have done. As we build and kind of spread the good word of Portrait of a Learner across the state, we want to be able to leverage that expertise and expand on that as we go. And as we think about this from a state perspective, really thinking about how do we elevate that and how do we support those other school districts who are not yet on this Portrait of a Learner journey? How do we support them in getting started and being successful in that journey? And David Cook and his division do a really great job of really engaging with those districts and helping anybody get started when they're ready to get started. Of course, we also have our statewide Portrait of a Learner that has been adopted by the board as a sort of model, a starting place for districts who want to start a Portrait of a Learner, who don't have one yet, aren't sure where to start. That statewide model is a really excellent starting point. I always keep saying start. A really excellent beginning for districts to really think through what this would look like. And we encourage districts to take that statewide model and then adapt that for their local needs and in their local contexts. So that's just a brief history of kind of where we've been with Portrait of a Learner. We're really excited to engage with you today and hear from your expertise and your perspectives, and we're here to answer any questions that you have during the discussion.
Thank you, Matthew. So in the two documents that we sent, the one that we sent to you yesterday, if we can look at that one, everything that we talk about when we talk about Portraits of a Learner, we talk about a journey. And so you'll see lots of depictions of this kind of road of where we are. And right now we are really trying to implement, get the energy behind Portraits of a Learner. But we want to make sure that we are good on our core assumptions. If you'll see in that document, I'm going to briefly read just kind of the headings of each of our core assumptions, and let's make sure that we're all on the same page as far as that is concerned. So our first core assumption is the student experience must become more engaging and aligned with the needs of today's learners. So I think we're back to that. We're in a different world. We're in a different economy. We've got to change to keep pace so that our students are prepared when they leave us, whatever that next opportunity for them is, either in an educational setting or in a career setting. Core assumption number 2, vibrant learning experiences create opportunities for students to develop the knowledge, skills, and dispositions necessary for future success. Not only that, vibrant learning experiences invite and encourage and put us in an environment where kids want to come to school. Our absentee rate, like many other states across the nation, is for chronic absenteeism is pretty high right now, understandably, with all the external forces really just kind of working against our kids sometimes. Just trying to get them into the schoolhouse is kind of challenging at times. Vibrant learning experiences make kids want to come to school. The third core assumption, Kentucky communities. So this is our local community component that we're really trying to make sure that we are satisfying and meeting their needs. Kentucky communities desire local accountability and assessment systems that see a fuller picture of each student and value the investment teachers, school leaders, and local boards make in providing relevant, personal, and joyful learning opportunities to each young person in their community. And then finally, our fourth core assumption, student demonstrations of learning have the potential to provide a more meaningful and equitable approach to measuring student achievement and readiness for the future. So more than just a snapshot of a test, more than just a one-time occurrence, really allowing those students the opportunity to show what they know and can do in a more hands-on experience. So those are what we've put together as our four core assumptions. And so I invite any feedback on those. Are we on the right track? Are we heading in the right direction? Is this the journey that we all think we need to be on together?
We'll open up to our members. Any comments to start?
I'd like to start out, Ms. Kenny, by just thanking you and the board and your team for the opportunity, because really what allowed Harrison County to come on board with this and move forward fairly rapidly is the Deeper Learning Grant. And that initiative that became our focus point of the Deeper Learning work. We're working as part of CKEC with Amanda Burrows and with UK Next Gen on our development of that portrait of a learner. And so, we have those global competencies and the definitions of those, and really drilling on down to now the indicator levels by grade band and those things by per global competency. But if you look at that roadmap, and if you look at the continuum of a portrait of a learner in the implementation continuum, it gets on down to what you're talking about in your opening about vibrant learning experiences, and then reiterated just now. We're excited about that work, and certainly if you build it, they will come. The old baseball analogy there. We believe in those vibrant learning experiences, but there's a great deal of work to get to that point. And I think all across this state, every district's in different varying stages of that work. And I believe we're going to need, I think that deeper learning work came as maybe part of that federal funds, and we know that's going to be drying up in the near future. I foresee that we're going to need ongoing, continuing work in this area. So whether that's a focus of the board or a direct legislative request for support in this area, it's great work. We're heading in the right direction. I would encourage us working towards that to secure either outside grant funding or further direct appropriation funding for the work to move forward. And I do want to thank your team for your leadership on that. So we are heading in the right direction, and a lot of people are sacrificing a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of outside hours beyond to make this happen. It's really positive.
Thank you.
Thanks, Superintendent Burchett. Others?
Chair Fletcher, Superintendent Hodges here in Greene County. If I can have just a minute.
Yes, sir.
We were also part of the Deeper Learning Grant, and it's been a good partnership here in Greene County, and we've seen some good things happening. I do have some concerns. I appreciate the work of this group and all the stakeholders that have had a voice here. Core assumption number one, I agree completely. The student experience must become more engaging. I think that needs to happen. I guess the current education model, I don't guess we feel like we're constrained with standardized testing as it stands now. That's a strain to our district. We feel more like we're preparing our students, and our success on that is a byproduct of what we're doing every day, promoting good teaching and good learning, or promoting teaching and learning. So I guess I say that to say this. When I look at some of these other core assumptions, assumption number 2, I agree completely. We need more vibrant learning experiences. We need hands-on, inquiry-based activities. We need a deeper understanding of the subject matter. I agree with that. We're part of the Deeper Learning Grant. We've actually started an Artisan Academy, our own local academy, where we encourage teachers to become a part of this. But we drew the line on requiring people to do this, just because we think if we require it, it's just going to become one of those things that people become resentful about. We don't get buy-in with that, and it just becomes a failure over time. And I think we've seen that in some other places when we've kind of researched this. Core assumption number 3. I guess I worry about that. Just how does it look in communities across Kentucky? How does it look different? Like I said, I don't feel constrained by state assessments. I guess probably some do. I agree with the innovative practices, but the communities really desire a local accountability and assessment system that really sees the fuller picture of each student. And is that going to look the same in Cumberland County as it does in Greene County? Or is it going to look different? How is that going to look? I just kind of want to hear your thoughts. So I have some concerns about that. Just the experience from district to district, if that is different. I agree. We need things to be more meaningful. And I think we're on the right path. I as well am kind of concerned about the pace, about this becoming a requirement. And also, in a sense, probably just when I look at this nationwide, it seems that I don't want it to become something where people are looking for an easy button, an easy way out of holding people accountable. I just want to make sure the accountability piece is still there. And maybe that's like you mentioned at the start. I want to make sure things are aligned to the standards. And we're holding people accountable. We're still measuring that as well. And I just don't want us to, I just feel like society, sometimes we're trying to water things down. I don't want to do that.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Cox. Any comments there, Associate Commissioner? I'm sorry, Interim Commissioner.
That's okay. We're in agreement. We don't want a system that is watered down by any measure. We want to hold ourselves and our students to very high standards. And there will always be, or likely always be, both federal and state requirements for accountability. This is looking at another component that we hear from our local communities that they desire more evidence of in students being able to perform. So, and to the issue of if things look different in different locations, I think that's okay. It's okay for things to look different because your local communities are very different in and of themselves. And what your local communities would like to see from you as public school districts looks very different from district to district, from region to region even. So I think that's okay. We shouldn't be concerned as long as we are meeting the needs of students, families, teachers, and your community members. So I don't think we should be kind of scared of that. As we think about those vibrant learning experiences, and I think what causes us most pause is how do we, and we know many districts are doing that already. Let's be very clear that there are lots of districts that are already doing that. And of course, good teaching and learning should be present everywhere. Again, back to that, it doesn't matter what instructional practice we're doing, good teaching and learning should be happening. So I don't think all of our districts are there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our question for you as we think together, and I hear some pause about graduation requirements, is if not that, then what would it take? What would we do as both state and local leaders to ensure that every student gets that vibrant learning possibility? So I think that's the tough question we're trying to solve. How do we make sure that we make that available everywhere?
I'm going to attempt to answer that
Yeah,
question.
thank you.
If I may, I'm going to start with a little bit of Lawrence County's journey briefly, and then where we are now.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Years ago, Lawrence County Schools was labeled a persistently low achieving district. Mr. Michael Armstrong took a lot of tough decisions, and when you're labeled as a PLA district, your focus is tests, test scores. He went through the turnaround process. Dr. Kelly Foster was a part of that, as a matter of fact. And once Mr. Armstrong moved on, I was able to continue and then add some other items. And then I remember the day that we were no longer PLA. We put flags up and down Bulldog Lane. We celebrated. It was just like we had won the Super Bowl. We were no longer a PLA district. Matter of fact, we moved to being a proficient district and a distinguished high school. Again, that work started with the turnaround process. And then about a week after we were done celebrating, I had someone to come and ask me, said, "Congratulations, but are you relevant?" I was mad. We just achieved the goal. It's the goal we wanted. But the question was, will your students still want to come to school? Do they have opportunities to do what they want to do? So after winning the Super Bowl, the true hard reality came that we weren't relevant. So how do we change that? Okay, our focus was test scores. It was all about how do you meet benchmarks? And again, that's still important. We still have to make sure that our kids are ready for college. They have to be ready for what's to come. They have to be academically ready. So we began with a focus on career technical, an added focus on career technical, to give our students more opportunities with job shadowing and also with internships, apprenticeships, trying to move that direction. And then I was invited to be a part of the Kentucky Council for Advancing Education. And for those of you that don't know, that was the parent or the beginning of the Kentucky United We Learn Council. We were a part of that. And the process that really opened my eyes of looking at deeper learning was the empathy interview process. If you go through this process and go through every part of it, the empathy interview basically asked you to ask your community to tell your story. Specifically, what was your experience with our district? And let me tell you, that's hard, because you'll hear some things as a superintendent. You're like, we do that, but maybe we don't do that. So then we started looking at one of the biggest changes was, why are we focused so much on testing? On a district that was a PLA status, now went through the turnaround process and did a lot of great things with a lot of hard work from a lot of individuals in our district. How do we change that to give more vibrant opportunities? So after being a part of that KCAE, also joining the L3 group with David Cook and his group, we started looking at the portrait of a learner. And we developed our competencies really around our 4 R's, which has been in our district for years, part of our PBIS system. We look at respectful, how are students respectful, responsible, how do they build relationships, and how are they ready? And so we build our competencies. So moving fast forward, we've got our portrait of a learner. At this point, we're beginning to build our performance level descriptors. And we have a meeting on Thursday and Friday with Kentucky Next Gen on how does that performance level descriptors look K through 12. So some of you are a little farther along than we are, but I'm excited about that. But now, on the other hand, I think that we'd be making a mistake if we make it a graduation requirement. I think there would be a lot of unintended consequences when you look at doing a graduation requirement mixed in with accountability. But on the other hand, I think we have to start with maybe some extrinsic motivation. An idea, and I know this would be a lot of heavy lift and be some other ideas out there, was maybe we make this whereas if our local districts give a certification, which some districts already do that, we're not there yet. We do a work ready certification, but we're not at the point of portrait of a learner. Or if KDE endorsed it, something like the Commonwealth Diploma, could students get keys money? Maybe $50 a semester or $100 a semester. So if you add that in there, then all of a sudden now our districts have an incentive to help their students and to add those type of, and again, most districts already have these type of activities and they're expanding. But now we're going to be able to add that as an incentive to students. Now, when you start saying keys money, then you get parent buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And parents want to know, what exactly is this portrait of a learner? How do we make this possible? So as opposed to a graduation requirement, again, we believe in the work, and we've done a lot of work ever since COVID. As a matter of fact, we started the portrait of a learner prior to COVID. Of course, COVID put a stop to that. And then we started the work back together, and we've been doing that now. We took us almost 2 years to develop our portrait of a learner, and now we're doing our performance level descriptors, and we believe in the work. But I do believe, just like I think Superintendent Cox was portraying, it would be, I think it would be a setback if we looked at doing this as a graduation requirement. So how do we build that extrinsic motivation to make it intrinsic motivation for people to want to be a part of that? Again, we have several groups that have given us all kinds of great information through empathy interviews, through surveys. We've learned a lot from our community. When you think you know your community, go talk to them again, and you'll learn more. And then where do we go from here? So again, I know that would be a heavy lift, but I think a good start for us could possibly looking at keys money for students that earn a portrait of a learner certificate or a certification of that sort. Again, that's an idea, open to many other ideas. But it's. I think we'd be going down the wrong path if we actually looked at it as a graduation requirement. For what it's worth.
Thank you very much, Chair Fletcher. I really appreciate you sharing the story of Lawrence County and kind of how you got to where you are today. Are there other districts that could share similar stories of your path on Portraits of a Learner?
I mean, I'll be glad to share. I'd really like to draw on a couple of experiences. One that would parallel with Dr. Fletcher, as I think about this. Currently, in LaRue County, when the current accountability test data has come out, and we're not in that bottom 5%. So therefore, our focus can be on vibrant learning or taking different paths, that kind of thing. But then I go back to thinking about what Dr. Fletcher said when I was an education recovery leader and worked with Dr. Foster, and I'm working with some of the lowest performing schools in the state. And I'm working with these principals and trying to help them to, get out of that designation. I think that would be a hard sell, trying to get them to focus on something like this when they're really just worried about saving their jobs if they're found to be not to have capacity, if that makes sense. So I think about that in terms of when we talk about every child, and we're talking about every kid in every school and every district. So that's kind of broad. So I think about that and what a heavy lift that would be on that bottom 5%. And again, I go back to, Dr. Burchett, Dr. Fletcher, we're very appreciative of the guidance and leadership that has been provided. We're part of the Deeper Learning Grant. We're part of an L3 cohort, and our journey has been very, very similar. Part of our strategic plan, the profile of a graduate, profile of a learner was part of that strategic plan until COVID hit, and then we had to put that on the back burner. So we've been fortunate to. We're a little bit farther along. We have some pilots, teachers now in all of our schools. So by probably January, February, we hope to be in the situation where kids are able to provide evidence and defend their learning. So that's kind of where we are, and we're kind of excited about that because we were always on board with students being able to, in other words, taking a whole child approach, a holistic approach, and allowing students to demonstrate what they know and what they can do in ways other than a standardized test. As a matter of fact, that is, that's our vision statement. A future-driven school district focused on the whole child, where no group is ever marginalized. So we're all about that. And again, what Dr. Fletcher said, those empathy surveys and listening to, what folks in our community said. But I think that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about it is that to be able to drill down in the community and find out, what their thoughts are and allow them to play a role in that partnership and ownership of what's going on in the schools, because I think what it's helped us to do, especially coming out of COVID, where there was some divisiveness, then we went right into trying to get a nickel tax passed, and that creates more divisiveness. So what this has helped us to do is to kind of bridge that gap a little bit in terms of pulling the district or the schools and the community closer together by allowing them to have some voice and then sharing that. We have shared our progress all along, whether it be at civic groups like Rotary and Chamber of Commerce, so that those community leaders can see we're utilizing what you share with us, and here's the kind of the process all along. And even again, when we get to the point where we do have students that are providing those evidence, we're going to bring those along at a Rotary Club meeting, probably not the one that you'll get to visit, but probably sometime in February, so that those community leaders can see this thing from kind of like start to, I'm not going to say finish, but to kind of where we are in that process. So I don't know if that kind of helps you or not. I feel like I've rambled a little bit, but kind of giving you a big picture and various experiences that I have dealt with.
Well, I appreciate those comments very much. In fact, you've told us some of the positives, but you've also talked about some of the challenges along the way, where things take your direction and make you have to take a little detour and then come back. But I guess what I hear is your persistence, that you stayed the course, always thinking this is the way we want to operate our school district. This is how we want to be reflected in our community. So appreciate very much you telling that story. I guess the one piece that I am a little perplexed, and I've always been very honest with you all that I am not an educator. And so I've never been in the classroom and faced the challenges that a lot of our teachers face on a daily basis, as they're just trying to get that light bulb to come on in a kid's head, where they get it or they enjoy it. But I think of portraits of the learner as not the what we are trying to impart, more the how we are trying to impart. And so as we think about maybe those students particularly that are the most difficult to reach, something a little different than they're used to might just be the thing that they say, well, I couldn't learn it this way, but this really helps me learn it the other way. So I think we see that with more the hands-on, evidence-based type opportunities, especially for kids that maybe don't test well, and end up with a reflection on themselves that they're not a good student because they don't test well. This is another opportunity to say, I'm a good student. I can produce this evidence in a different way. Mm-hmm. So that's my logical side. I don't know, maybe coming through a little more than it needs to, but I appreciate you all just listen to me ramble on just a little bit. Dr. Burchett.
Yeah, so.
Would you like to share?
I would love to. So I'll just hold, ours up just briefly. This is, our competencies of portrait of a learner, and then of course the definitions of each one of those. And as I said earlier, we're in that process of developing those performance indicator descriptors at the grade levels right now. But we've got a core team working on that. And I think it's 11 or 12 people across the district representative of all the schools and grade levels and grade bands. The challenging work beyond that will be now once that's developed and in place, taking that district-wide, you know, with all staff. That's a lot of work. That's a big push. It sounds like you're a little bit ahead on that, working toward, you got some pilots doing that in some schools, but taking that, you know, system-wide. And then, as I said earlier, drilling on into those deeper, vibrant learning experiences that go along with those performance indicators. And so I look at the opportunity for I understand the challenges of having a state portrait and then having local portraits as well. But maybe the state could be more of like just a model or a goal, and then having a repository of resources and designed and aligned with the standards and with maybe some of the performance level indicators that we could pull upon. And of course, it's different in every community because the resources in every community are different, right? So, but we see this as the right path, the right movement. I know there's districts that are well ahead. Shelby County is way down the road on this part. Jefferson County's been doing the defenses for some time with their backpack. That's where we want to get to. And I think, you know, maybe part of it's interesting that Dr. Fletcher and David Raleigh brought up, you know, those low performing schools. When you're in that situation, that is your focus. And we are somewhat held. We talk about it all the time, held hostage to the accountability system and the test, right? You know, there's two ways of approaching that. I've seen schools, I've seen districts that really attack the test. You know, there's a process you can do pretty good with that. But to have long-term sustained growth, we do believe that, you know, if we're doing the right thing with teaching and learning in the classroom, that we'll perform well on the test. Okay, so we have to keep that focus in mind. And I think an important thing we need to remember is that chronic absenteeism and why that's occurring. Sometimes it's just the lack of value in the household, the home that some students are residing in, and then in some cases we're not doing a good enough job engaging in the classroom. So we need to be honest about that. Our teachers are working extremely hard, and they're overwhelmed right now with the demands with the MTSS system and the number of students that are behind grade level in performance. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think we don't need to rush this work. We're headed in the right direction as a state, and I believe we need to look at that pace and look at the expectations and make it more, let it come along organically. I was an instructional technology leader for a lot of years, and worked with David Couch pretty much my whole career, and had the opportunity to acquire several grants. I remember back when we did the 21st century classrooms, and you know, it was what did we want in the classroom and how did we want teachers teaching with these tools in the classroom, and we implemented this district-wide and we put it in every classroom, and our committee, our local groups determined that they wanted every classroom equipped exactly the same. Well, the cost, you know, there's a cost with that. And to do that, we had to make some decisions that, you know, we weren't going to be able to do this or do that. And then after we went back and looked at it, there were those champion teachers that were, and there's a lot of research around this, that were implementing very well, and they're carrying the torch forward. And then there was those you could find the devices or the products sitting in the corner with dust on them. So I think we really have to be very careful about that change process with this, and we grow this organically and we show the value of it obviously in our communities, one classroom, one student at a time, one school at a time, and then grow that with little small learning laboratories or little learning incubators that demonstrate what this can look like. Another thing that we're doing, and there's many districts and some districts in this room, I know Mr. Cochran has this program. We are a district-wide Leader in Me district now. We've partnered with Franklin Covey, and this goes back to the social and emotional and some of those pieces that we sometimes forget about academically, right? And that is such an important piece of this, that we view that as a way to blend this academic learning, vibrant learning experiences, and that leadership growth and development all under one umbrella. And so we're on a 4-year plan to do that. We trained every employee, not just our teachers, but our bus drivers, our cooks, our secretaries, everybody in the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And we were able to do that because we had could take advantage of some one-time monies to do that with. But all of these initiatives are important. And I think you're going to have different things like this going on all across the state. So getting an assessment of that and everybody working forward to just continually improve the instructional model, knowing that we have to have these global competencies of vibrant learning experiences and growing our students to become leaders in the classroom. Everybody can be a leader in some capacity. And just like you said, some don't perform well. I have children that never were great test takers, but I'm going to tell you, they could outperform anybody in an interview, a face-to-face.
Right.
Their social emotional level, their EQ was off the charts, but their ability to perform IQ-wise on a test was not as great as other students. So that would be my perspective, and I think we all should have those students. So.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
Other comments from our group?
Thank you.
Hey, Robin, this is Dave Cox. I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you're still letting us do these virtually. That saves a lot of time, and I wanted to thank you for that. But as far as this topic is concerned, Robbie and I have talked a bit about this, and I just would like to caution the group, at least from what we've experienced here, is to be kind of careful. I think that it's a real threat that sometimes we let the process kind of trump the product. We know what we're looking for, and we all agree on these core initiatives. I don't think there's anybody that would disagree that this isn't a good outcome if we can achieve that. But anytime from our perspective, we've tried to mass produce something, an initiative, we seem to lose some personal control of that. And I would worry about that from the local control, from school district standpoint, just from where we're at. I would love to see this thing be able to be cultivated and shared among one another, with perhaps a KDE overseeing it from a support standpoint, maybe through GMAP with assurances, and then put together some type of a formalized way that we can share some of the stuff that we're doing. Everything that we're doing that's been productive for our kids, our Red Out Scholars program that is promoting apprenticeships, all of our tens of related arts classes have been initiated by kids and by what the community wants. We visited a school in Georgia about a year and a half ago that was incredible in what they were doing with entrepreneurship. They had 1 block a day dedicated to entrepreneurship. And what I thought the coolest part about that was, that's not necessarily innovative, but they brought their community actually came in and they evaluated every one of these seniors. They put panels together. We happened to be there on one of those days. And it was the most empowering thing I've seen. There was 4 special needs kids and a teacher that were in one group, and they started a dog grooming business. I know that sounds silly, but it was the biggest thing in the world to those kids. And they were actually bringing money into school, converting that money over to needy kids in the school. It was just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I don't know how you could evaluate that from an assessment standpoint or mass produce that. That was particular to that particular part of Georgia, but it may not have been particular to some other areas. So I just worry about the local control. It's a bit of a long statement, I know, but I do agree with Dr. Fletcher as well. I don't think this, in my mind, fits real well with the graduation requirement. I would love to see us be able to do this on a local level with KDE support, and then find some way to get David Cook involved. He's an innovation guy. We love David down here in Corbin. If we could just get him involved in ways that we can share all this good stuff that we're doing among one another, because I think there's great stuff going on everywhere, and I think that's where we fall short. We're kind of in the southeastern corner down here. We don't hear a lot from other folks that much, but I do appreciate the conversation, and I think we're on the right track. I just worry about our process a bit. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments?
Chair Fletcher, can I speak one more time? Superintendent Hodges?
Yes, sir. And then right after you, we'll have Superintendent Cochran. So
I'll be
Superintendent Hodges.
brief. The things I heard that mirror what I was trying to say earlier is don't rush. Let this come along organically. Not everyone is ready. I think if you try to rush it, it'll be a flop. I don't like the requirement piece of it. We've got the biggest bang for our buck, and I've heard this from you all in the room. When we try to incentivize this at the local level, it has worked well. We've got buy-in from people. We've got buy-in from staff. We've got buy-in from the community. And when my daughter's sitting in one classroom and this type of learning is happening in the next classroom, they want to be a part of it. Students start to talk about it. Parents start to talk about it. That's where you see your growth and people want to become a part of it. Then the next teacher wants to become a part of it. But if we try to require this in some way, form, or fashion, I'm hesitant to get behind that. Thank you.
All right, Superintendent Cochran.
I was just going to add to what Dr. Bircher was talking about, the social emotional piece. And I think that it is a very important piece to education as a whole, but also to the profile of a learner. I think with the social emotional learner piece, it really helps our experience with our development of profile learners. It's helping our students with self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And I think that those things are all key for life beyond high school for our kids. And I agree with that being said, I agree with everything that Will just said. Agree with a lot of things that everyone has said. I think that has to come locally. We're part of L3 as well, and I really appreciate David and Sarah for their work in leading L3. And each local, as we all know, community will be different in their needs and their wants. For us, in our experience, our community, as we did our interviews, really wanted more career and technical opportunities. They wanted more dual credit options, and they really wanted to focus for our kids on personal leadership development. And so we've kind of developed our portrait of a learner to include all of those things. So if we don't have the local piece as a central piece, then I don't see how it can be successful. So, and I really like the incentive part as well.
Could I have one more thing? And this is, and I've disappointed myself that I failed to mention this earlier, because even though we value the input from our community and those empathy surveys, I think the piece that resonated with us most were the responses that we got from our students. Because at the end of the day, yeah, we want to meet the needs of the community, but at the end of the day, it's the learner. And so I'm thinking that if we want to get to every student, then we probably need to make sure that we're providing opportunities for student advocacy and student voice. Because when I think back, and I'll even say this, we've done these empathy surveys, and I'll have kids come up to me when I'm out in the schools, and they're not afraid to come to me. Now they'll say, "Don't say my name," but if there's something, if it's just the old sit and get in a classroom, they'll be quick to tell you, I would rather be in such and such's classroom because we're doing hands-on kind of learning. So. Anyway, I just wanted to share that's probably what I appreciate the most in our district is allowing students to provide that kind of feedback.
Thanks, Superintendent Riley. Any others?
I agree with everything like Tom said. One of the things, Ms. Kenny, when you mentioned the core set assumptions, I highlighted first sentence of the core number 1 is the traditional model of education with this emphasis on standardized testing and rote memorization no longer effectively prepares. The thing I would like to challenge the board and KDE is let's look at the portrait of the learner. I think everybody can get behind, but let's be bold about what we're doing with the assessment piece. If we really want if we know this is what we want to move to, we can't keep being, David's laughing back there. He either agrees or disagrees. I don't know, but it feels like we still have that that wrapped around our ankle that we got to drag along with us because that's what we've always done to do that. This is the better model, but we can't keep tying ourselves to everything. I'll go back to what Robbie said. I mean, we're a district that, everybody knows, we have 78% of our kids free and reduced lunch. We're in an area that's got a lot of districts that have a lot more resources than we do. We can't ignore that one portion of it because if we do, we're going to get left behind in the other parts. So it's a really, like we're saying, every district has so many different things. To say we're going to do it all one way, I think is an impossibility. But let's be bold about what we're doing with our assessment. And I know we can argue that Will had some good points about not letting things go, but let's be bold about what we're going to do with assessment moving forward if we want to do this the right way.
Superintendent Borchers, thank you so much for pulling in the assessment piece of this because it's important, right? So as we're talking about a new and different way of learning and instruction, then you have to be able to measure that in some way. So that leads to a different type of assessment. I think for many years, and let's just, put it out there, of course, federal and state law give us a lot of requirements when it comes to assessment. But I think we are more optimistic at the department than we have been in the past. Secretary Cordoza has just sent us a letter, even this week, talking about changing what assessments look like at the federal level. So, and of course, we have a grant that's helping us explore this as part of what we will eventually present back to US Ed and say, this is how we think we should assess in Kentucky. Now, we don't know if they'll say yes or no, but certainly if we don't ask, we're never going to get an answer one way or another. So it is important on our journey, and you'll see again on our little cheat sheet that we have, it does envision at a point in the future that we would go and ask both the General Assembly and the US Ed for a different assessment and accountability system. So this is all part of the journey together. And if I can just, with the chair's consent, if I can just say, the things that we're talking about, and to Tom's point, the United We Learn Council has adopted a moonshot, and a moonshot is something that is aspirational but achievable. And their draft moonshot, as I listen to all the conversation, is to build a prosperous Kentucky. We will launch an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to our learners. So our students, that's at the center of our conversation. And then vibrant learning experiences, their tagline for that as a draft is learning that matters to students. And that's what we're talking about, learning that matters to students. So I know we're almost out of time. I want to thank you all for all the discussion today, sort of your caution to us. I will say, I think we all feel a little bit of sense of urgency with this, in that for every year that passes, it's another group of students that don't get to experience this. But at the same time, we're trying to be thoughtful and deliberate. So your encouragement to us about the pace has been received, and of course we'll share that with the state board. At some point we might be coming back to you, however, to say, okay, we've reached that plateau. We've reached the point where we have districts that the momentum is still not gaining more. And so that's part of our conversation. I hope that we can continue to have in informal settings as well as in a more formal setting like this, where we're like, okay, we still haven't gotten everybody. We still don't have everybody on board. The organic growth, of course, is very, very encouraging. But our goal is to have each and every student have the accessibility to this type of learning and instruction. So thank you very much for your comments, and appreciate very much, Chair Fletcher.
Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate the opportunity as superintendents who represent other superintendents, and more importantly, who represent students. We want to do what's best. And I've heard so many, and I've said this too, that we can do better than what our accountability system is now. And I think we can do better than just better. We can be bold. We can be different. I thank Superintendent Borchers for bringing up the accountability assessment piece, because if you look at the work of the Kentucky United We Learn Council, it's how do we challenge? How do we become? Kentucky's already leaders. We're already leaders within our state. and how do we push forward to do the best things for our students. So again, we can do better, but we can also be bold. So we thank you for the opportunity, for the input. We appreciate it so much. Again, there was talk of a regulation being here tonight, and then your department, your group put on the brakes, and we appreciate that so much. All right, any other closing comments from our group?
I just wanted to point out, it's on your document at the end, the
thank you,
assumptions
David.
document, because several of you or multiple of you pointed out, Superintendent Fletcher especially, about how this needs to be organic and how this needs to be, but some people are a little not sure. That's why we've created a really robust set of resources that guide you through the process. So if you're just getting started, and I wanted to go back to something Interim Commissioner Kinney said, I love the word model. Rather than calling that a state portrait, it's a model portrait. It's a way for you to, if you don't know where to start. That's why we wanted to do all that, is to give you, so there's a lot of help on the website to create your own local portrait that may not have any resemblance to the state one, but it's, that's what we want to do for you all, is support you in getting where you need to go and what steps you are on the journey. So just wanted to punch that a little bit more and make sure you saw that it's at the bottom. It's a link at the bottom of the document.
And I think too, if you look at, remember what Superintendent Cox said, how do we collaborate and how do we share? Because there's so many great things going on in our district. And also too, I think one other challenge that we need to not leave is, how do we provide help, resources to those districts that may not have the financial resources of others? Because there are some opportunities you're going to be able to find in some of our districts, whereas you're not going to be able to find in others. We don't want any child, and I hate to use the word left behind or the phrase, but we don't want any child left behind. And more than that, we want to give every child every opportunity. That being said, any other comments? Thank you again. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So made.
Motion by Superintendent Cochran. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Superintendent Raleigh. Any opposed? We are adjourned.